All right, good evening. It's been a very, very interesting day in the United States of America because former President Donald Trump is now President elect Donald Trump. The 45th president is also the 47th president. He has clinched that presidency, and he's, as of this evening, had 277 electoral votes. He needs 270, so he's comfortably crossed that line. Republicans who have spoken to the press, and I'm quoting the NPR here, Republicans have said that Trump has won this election simply because voters across the country felt that they're better off now than they're better off 4 years ago than they are right now. So when people considered the economy, which was Trump's major plank for this election, they felt that they were better off when Trump left the office than they are right now when Biden is leaving the office. And throughout his 2 year campaign, remember, he started 2 years ago, he went after President Biden and Kamala Harris on inflation and the economy and how expensive things are. And that's a message that seems to have really resonated with voters who view the economy as very negative right now compared to where it was in 2020. Remember, Trump is also the man who refused to accept the election results in 2020. He mounted a attempt of a coup and an attack on the Capitol in January 6th in 2021. But people also say now that public memory is short, and while that might not have been very acceptable for a lot of people right now, it is inflation that really seems to be making that difference. At least that's the analysis that we're getting at this point. Nationally and the battleground states, voters seem to have picked Trump. He's won a lot of the swing states as well, and we'll go into that, analysis in a minute. I want you to also remember that Trump is the first convicted felon to be elected president. There was a judgment that came out from a New York court on the 26th of November on his hush money case, where he was actually judged as guilty. Now, the question of whether or not he will face punishment, because remember, as president, he can forgive himself. And knowing the kind of person Trump is, he's likely to take that option. He also faces criminal charges in 3 or 4 other cases, which are still to be heard, and we'll know how that plays out. Trump is 78 years old. That makes him the oldest person. We can say the oldest man because America doesn't has never had a woman president, and it's not going to have one anytime soon. At 78, Trump is the oldest man to have been elected president of the United States. Joe Biden was also 78, but Trump is slightly older at this point than Joe Biden was when he was sworn into office. Trump has survived 2 assassination attempts, during this entire campaign. And there's arguably some people have said that the assassination attempts on him, where there was a bullet that grazed his ear, actually turned a lot of the sentiment in his favor. There was a victory speech, which was very interesting because on the stage with him during that victory speech were not just his family, which is customary, was also the world's richest man, Elon Musk, who has been a supporter of Trump this entire time. Remember, Trump has referred to Elon Musk as a genius who should be protected. It's come into question that Elon Musk has a lot of government contracts and he's vying for more government contracts, and this is something that might go in his favor. Trump is also very clear about the fact that when protecting geniuses, what he means is reducing taxes for the rich so that they're able to build more. Elon Musk basically saying that now onwards, Americans are free to build as they please, and this will be a country that actually builds a lot more. Very, very interesting sort of breakup into all of this. But let me first bring in a voice. I have with me Hiral Sachde. Hiral is a New York based journalist who's joining us right now on a very crisp New York morning. Hiral, good morning in New
Good
York.
morning, Faye.
What a exciting night it has been for you because it was close for a bit there. We couldn't call it. Once both of them crossed 200, it was a little difficult to tell. But did it seem like Donald Trump was always going to win?
Well, it was quite close to call. If you go by the polls, they were really close. But what we saw was something unexpected: Pennsylvania flipping again. So I think that's what worked in Donald Trump's favor. So yes, indeed, it is a bright, sunny, windy morning in New York. Maybe not that bright on the Democratic side.
Well, Hira, tell me where the from a from the population and the demographic side, where that support came, because we know that the white male support was already with Trump. But did he get support from the Indian American community? Was it white women who voted for him? Where did that extra support come? Did he get any of the Latino votes that he was trying for? Where, what happened? What changed?
So it was mainly two things I would say here. The Latino voters. Okay. So Latino voters, especially male, they favored Donald Trump. So over 50% of Latino males were supporting Donald Trump compared to women who were probably under 40%. Um, of course, when came to abortion rights, the women did support Harris, but clearly that Latino vote was a big shift which Biden had in 2020. Now, another thing that has happened is Donald Trump seems to have gained young voters. So these are young voters. So I'm assuming Gen Z, but they are younger than the usual demographic of the Conservative Party. So he's lost actually the old age voters. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be ageist here, but they seem to have gained that demographic. Another thing that did not probably work for Democrats was that the women voters were pegged to be a big support base considering they had pitched Kamala Harris. Somehow that did not translate into as many votes. And Kamala Harris has a bigger appeal in urban areas. In rural areas, it is still Trump. So those are the early analysis and numbers we are seeing in that space.
But I want to respond to one of the things that's coming in on our chat window. There's someone called Maximum Potential who says, "Let me add that people were fed up with wokeism, with transgenderism, with LGBTQI content in children's libraries, cancel culture, victim mentality. Those people voted for Trump." But do you see that actually swinging sentiment across the country, that America became too woke for a lot of people?
Well, I'm close to New York, and New York is as woke as it always was. And I don't think that is going to change no matter who is sitting at the center. However, what this has done is that we, I will just put this in context with what happened in Florida. So the moment Ron DeSantis came in, he went after the literature in schools. He went after the curriculum, trying to do away with any references, any text referring to inclusivity, LGBTQIA. So he did that, and he did a big crackdown there. And that is what Trump had also mentioned in his Madison Square Garden rally. So now, with Trump in power, naturally this conversation is going to again tilt towards the conservative side instead of the progressive side that we were seeing in the past few years.
Wasn't it true also that at a recent campaign rally for Donald Trump, there was a comedian who called Puerto Rico a island of garbage floating in the Pacific Ocean? And there was a lot of racist comments that were made, and I remember there was a backlash. But where did the Latino male vote still come from in spite of comments like that? So, what was it about his campaign that resonated with that demographic?
So there were two things here. If you look at Puerto Rico, the mainland actually votes. They're allowed to vote since it's
Yes.
a principality of USA. Now, as far as the overall Latino vote goes, okay, it is not just Puerto Ricans. It is Hispanics, the immigrants from Mexico. There are immigrants from Cuba. So that is another big, like we have a lot of Latino people from different South American countries. And the biggest concern amongst every voter, whether it is Latino or Indian, was economy. And I think that is where it kind of flipped forward in favor of Donald Trump because everybody wanted to see a change there. How it is going to impact your day-to-day expenses, inflation coming down, economy. Those were the things that probably pushed voters for a change. So I think it was more of an anti-incumbency than per se a favorable candidate, so to say.
What will this mean for the economy in the US? We've seen men like Elon Musk rejoicing at this point. Is it only going to be good for people like him, or is it likely that the changes will impact everyone? And was this also linked to the fact that Kamala Harris really seemed like she was going to continue Joe Biden's policies and didn't really have any sort of differential offer to make during her campaign.
So let us look at it this way: that what did Donald Trump talk of? He talks about tax cuts, which is a very typical Republican ideology. Tax cuts has always been a Republican domain. They believe in cutting taxes, whereas Democrats have always leaned towards higher taxes. Okay, so he's promised that. Then next he's talked about tariffs, imposing tariffs on imported goods, especially from China or any other country, and then some further conditions to it, that if you're not trading in dollar, we will add a higher tariff and stuff. However, all of that looks like only a promise at the moment, because it has to be, to turn it into a policy, he's going to need congressional support. Okay, these will have to go through the entire motion to become policies, and all the legislators will weigh in on this. So we
Yeah.
really need to see. However, what he is really leveraged on is that during his time, all the inflation, the economy, everything was stable, which of course the Democrats argue that this was the legacy of Obama, and he actually came in at a time, and he milked it to his advantage. But at the same time, in the past 4 years, Democrats have really not been able to push their point forward that they can bring the change, because they had already done it once. So clearly, on the economy and inflation perspective, now all eyes are on Trump, and he better deliver, because that has been his main campaign promise, and that is what most voters on the street want. Whether it will be beneficial for people like
Yeah.
Elon Musk, well, he's a businessman at the end of the day, and he believes in trade-offs and more transactional kind of strategy and policy. So we need to see how this translates into his group of businessmen who are probably his supporters and all, whether he favors them, or whether he brings about policies impacting their industries or favoring that industry that they are in. That will unfold over the next few months or years, I can say.
Well, you did mention congressional support. Right now, the Republicans, they have the White House as of January. They have a majority of the Supreme Court. They're likely to have congressional and Senate majority as well. This is unprecedented. Is that correct? And what could they do with this much, with this kind of support and this kind of majority?
Only one thing comes to my mind: Roe v. Wade. We saw what happened there. So this is an opportunity for Trump, in his administration, and the Republicans to bring about some very radical changes which are leaning on the conservative or the rightist side. So we might, that is my hunch, that we might see more of this. However, I hope sense prevails, because in popular vote also what we saw is that when the states tried to ratify their abortion laws to bring in certain terms and conditions after the Roe v. Wade went out, they there was not much. Some of them could not do it, so they did not. It clearly, that particular point is pretty divided. So even in other conservative policies, we have both side voices, and very strong ones and big numbers. So it really needs to be seen what exactly comes up and how they overturn it. However, it is all working in their favor. They have the lawmakers, they have the judicial system, and they also have the governance under them. So yes, that combination is pretty powerful, and that could bring about some changes which may not
Yeah.
not really feel popular in the moment, or feel like it's overturning what we've been used to.
Well, I just wanted to, explain this for our audience, because saying that Trump will ban abortion is a simplification of what we're talking about. There was a Supreme Court judgment of Roe versus Wade, which America calls Roe v. Wade, which basically said that abortion is a fundamental right for women, and in America, every state can make its own laws. So if it's a fundamental right, the state laws cannot take that away from you across the board for the country. What happened during Trump's previous term is that he stacked the Supreme Court with more Republicans or more conservative judges. They reversed Roe v. Wade, allowing each state to make their own laws. Conservative states have since then brought about laws that effectively ban abortions or don't make them as easily available. Here's my question. As a woman yourself who lives in the United States right now, is this perhaps life threatening for women there? Because if states ban abortion, it means, and there's been some confusion and reporting about the fact that people are not really clear if it's life threatening, if it's life threatening for the baby or the mother. Can they give that treatment to a woman? What's really going on here? Could you explain that to us?
So there are some states which have completely have had a blanket ban on abortion. So what we see is women traveling from one state to the other to get any sort of abortion related or any sort of reproductive, pregnancy termination related treatments. Some states have also banned the pills that were given for abortion. So there's some states have a complete ban on treatments on medication, while some have a leeway that okay, you can do it up to 6 weeks, which is of course debatable because in that much time frame, woman to woman, we know that sometimes we don't even realize
Yep.
we are pregnant. Okay, and 6 to 10 week is when the heartbeat is spotted. So now that at that juncture, when once the heartbeat is spotted, that is where Roe v. Wade says that with a heartbeat in the fetus, you cannot terminate it. However, it's not just about the heartbeat and the fetus, right? It is more than that. Sometimes it is not a viable pregnancy or whatever. So those kind of you can say provisions or sub provisions are not visible in a lot of places. Yeah, and then some states have allowed abortion up to 15 weeks on health reasons and all. So it's right now, instead of it being a more standardized or a more accessible uh, treatment, it has become pretty scattered. So it depends on where you are, and that is clearly not a good sign, because imagine for something as basic as that, you cannot be hoping to keep moving. In fact, in the last week, we had two cases, and a 28-year-old mother who died of toxicity, and another one, an 18-year-old girl who again died because they were not afforded, they could not access abortion at the right time.
Unbelievable.
So it is quite a grim picture, and honestly, every woman I speak to is particularly miffed about this point, that our reproductive rights are not ours. In fact, the rallies that happened last week in New York, especially with women, they did mention this point, and one of the hoardings that is stuck to me is that if my vagina was firing bullets, I would it would have more rights.
Yeah.
So
Actually, that point actually brings me to gun laws, right? Because the Democrats were, although they hadn't managed to make that change, they were very clear about the fact that they needed to moderate, the rights to arms because of the kind of school shootings that America has seen, which is really endemic to that one country. It doesn't happen anywhere else because of how easily firearms are available. Now with Donald Trump, who has so much support of the National Association of Rifle Federation, what what do you expect will happen in that area? Is it possible that they might address it at all? Is it going to get worse? What's
my
happening?
my hopes were really high after he was shot at his own rally, but I don't see that change happening. There's a big divide over there. There's a big the NRA, or the National Rifle Association, is a very strong lobby, and then they have very strong supporters within the lawmakers. So within the Capitol Hill premises also, they have a lot of supporters. So I don't see that change happening. However, that's a desperate need of the hour, because despite being a civilized democracy, we are seeing so much of gun violence, and most of it targeted towards children. So that change is clearly what we are hoping for. However, it never happened with Republicans. Neither has Trump made any of those promises. In fact, even Democrats were pretty subtle and silent about what they are going to do to the gun laws. A few changes here and there that they tried to bring in did not get any support in the Congress and in Senate. So it's a very divided issue. However, it's also a very urgent issue which needs to be addressed.
There's also the question of the war in Gaza. While I know that Biden and Kamala Harris came under a lot of flack and they lost a lot of support from the possible American Muslim vote, who were very disillusioned with their handling and their blind support of Israel, to the point where they asked no questions at all and there was no accountability asked of Israel. Donald Trump has said that he will end the war. But what does that really mean?
Well, I am watching that as closely as you. Benjamin Netanyahu has clearly congratulated Trump. They seem to be on good terms. Uh, as a matter of fact, Israel is a ally and a very strong ally with unconditional support from America. What Trump does to end the war is really needs to be seen, but I hope he does because he did talk of trying to settle things in the Middle East. He never talked about stopping the war. So when he says that I will end the chaos in Middle East, those were his words at Madison Square Garden. I really hope that ending the chaos is equal to ending the war. However, it can also go in the other direction. Now that we have a president and the election is behind us, we don't know where he stands on continuing the conflict or bringing about a
Yeah.
ceasefire.
Also, Hiral, could you give us an idea of what this would mean for immigration? Because we have a lot of NRIs who are living in the US right now, waiting for their green cards, waiting for their citizenship. Trump has a really strong point of view on illegal immigrants. But is he likely to also become protectionist when it comes to immigrants finding routes to citizenship via green cards?
So uh, I would say that Trump also had this program, which was an investment based thing, which was giving green cards to people who put in a certain sum of money towards a certain project within the country. They were given conditional. It was the EB-5 plan. So that is Trump's one of most favored route of bringing in legal immigrants into the country, and that is what he floated around. However, he's been very elitist, if I may say, in his choice of people he wants in the country. So he doesn't want people who are crossing illegally, people who probably don't have the financial means but are coming into United States and hoping to secure a better future for themselves. So his preference of people who should come in into the country and not come in into the country is very clear, and that is where he keeps talking about. What we see here in terms of Indian Americans, we are skilled workers. A lot of us are on the H-1B. We asked I think during the Biden administration, during Modi's visit, he did try to increase the ceiling of H-1B, which happened. So, which was a good thing. I'm hoping that here Modi's personal ties with Trump might help in securing a safer and a more organized way of Indian Americans coming into into America. As far as the other group of people go who are migrating into America, that clearly is something that he's very vocal about. So he if the people fall in that category of people who he favors, I don't think there is an objection. However, the objection is towards people who are financially not that stable and may not have a way to sustain themselves after they come here and are crossing into the country illegally without proper paper documentation and
Yeah.
all sort of like crossing the borders, the porous borders through the night, through immigration mules and stuff like that.
Well, we do know that now President elect Donald Trump has a very strong friendship with our own Prime Minister Narendra Modi. What can the Indian community in the US expect now as a benefit out of that friendship?
Well, we have a lot of industrialists. We have a lot of CEOs in high tech, in tech companies who are on the top. So, as far as the era of Trump goes, I'm talking to friends who were here in his first 4 years of presidency. They just say that things were fine, things were okay. What they were probably unsure of was the unpredictability that he comes with. So, in terms of what it means for Indians, I think there is still a demand for skilled workers. All the companies that are headed by Indian American CEOs, they are pretty dominant in their field. So we bring a certain skill set, and that is our advantage as a group that comes as migrants. And I think changing that, especially when Donald Trump is very business oriented, is not going to happen. However, what I probably see may happen is that he's spoken about keeping uh, manufacturing here. So the outsourcing of production facilities,
Yeah.
bringing in goods from outside, that might impact. So what we see is probably a hit on imports if he goes through with the tariffs. Okay, probably a hit on investments in countries abroad, where of course India is one of the favored nations.
Yeah.
So we do get in a lot of investment and business or manufacturing units out of a lot of these corporates here. So that part is a little unsure. As far as
Yeah.
people who are
So,
within the country, it should work.
So, Hiral, India exports 18% of its total exports of finished goods to America. Everything from pharmaceuticals, down to textiles. It adds up to a fairly large chunk of our exports. When Donald Trump said that he will increase tariff on Chinese-made products, did it also possibly include other countries as well, or was he specifically talking only of China?
He's spoken about tariffs on most imported products. Then he's spoken about tariff on countries which specifically don't deal in dollar. Of course, India and another block of countries outside of America are trying to move from a dollar-based trade to a more uh, mutually favorable currency system. So, with that into fray, things might change. However, it will also depend on the Indo-US ties and how they strengthen. So, obviously, if Donald Trump is putting something on the table, it will now be also on part of India to how they negotiate their particular trade and tariff agreements going forward if they change after this.
Also, quick question about the LGBTQI community. There's a little bit of disappointment there because of a reversal, perhaps, of transgender rights. Um, is gay marriage in any way under threat as well? What do you think is going to happen now with a more conservative Republican point of view?
Wherever the laws are secure, we are good for now. But the combination of judicial, Congress, and the White House, if there is a challenge, that is the fear that what if what happened to Roe v. Wade is replicated in other progressive laws that came into the country. So I am hoping it doesn't go back. However, it depends. It also depends on which state you are in. So the states that already have their laws in place, hopefully it should stay that way. However, but so was Roe v. Wade. So yeah, I'm hoping that things are not going to get worse. However, as far as the day-to-day life goes, I think LGBTQI community should be okay in places that they've always deemed safe.
All right, Hiral Sachde joining us out of New York. Thank you so much for your time and for breaking that down for us so patiently. Thank you for your time. Hiral Sachde, thank you for speaking with us. For our audience, of course, we're going to keep track of everything that changes and how that affects various groups of people. If you have questions, leave it in the comment section. Tell us if what you think is going to change now that Trump is likely to become president. Remember, the US, it takes a few months, so he'll likely be sworn in early January. And Jan 6th or 7th is normally when they do it, so we can keep an eye on that as well. In the meantime, remember, like, share, subscribe, and join us for our membership as well. Thank you for watching. Good night.